1905, St. Petersburg. A dancer suffering a head injury, despite doctors' warnings, stepped onto stage. That night, she danced to Chopin's Funeral March, a piece she has never performed before. As she moves, she's no longer a performer. She becomes a figure carrying the dead, walking slowly to their final rest. Then let spirit slip free from the flesh, rising, reaching for the heavenly light. When she finishes, the audience is silent. Then a thunderous applause is heard, mixed with excited screams and many, many tears. The pianist is pale and said, "Never done that again. I've looked on death. I've even smelled the white flowers, the funeral flowers. And I've seen the children's coffins, little coffin after coffin." Reading through a page, I understand that dance can also be a form of dialogue, and sometimes it even speaks louder than words. I'm Mia from grade 9. Today, I want to share my journey in the world of dance and what I've learned along the way. At 6, I started learning ballet. For years, what it meant to me was simple. Copy the teacher, follow rules, get every move right. Every time I dance, my head is buzzed with voices. Legs higher, shoulders down, that's not correct. They carry the tone of my teachers, my parents, and myself, pushing me toward flawlessness, toward a dance free of any mistakes. Back then, dance was quite a boring, exhausting task. What kept me from giving up was actually a desire to sneak out and play with friends during break times. Then, at 12, I entered my first competition. In the weeks leading up to it, I was terrified. Not terrified of competing with others, but terrified of letting myself down, of making mistakes. Backstage, my heart pounded so hard that I could barely breathe. And when I finally stepped on the stage, I was utterly petrified. Then the music began, and something strange happened. With my mind too stressed and nervous, all the noise that once filled my head faded away. There was no room to self-criticism, nor fear, nor anything else. All that remains was the music and my whole body. I felt like a bird gliding across the stage, not thinking about how far my wings extended, just flying. And when I finished, I didn't just feel relieved. I felt alive. And for the first time, I didn't care if I messed up. I just wanted to dance. That performance was far from perfect, but I learned something that night. Dance isn't all about practicing techniques. It's what gave me the ability to talk to myself, really connect, not judge. And you can't have that kind of conversation if you're constantly telling yourself off. So that night, I stopped fighting. And for the very first time, I heard me through dance. Years later, I came across a memoir of Isadora Duncan, the dancer in the opening story. And through her words, I understand another layer of what dance can truly mean. That night at St. Petersburg, she danced despite an earlier injury. She laid herself completely bare on that stage, all her fear, her pain, her vulnerability. It's her truth, her willingness to be seen in her most fragile moment. And it's exactly those imperfect, fragile things that touch the audience so deeply. They didn't cry because they saw the most beautiful performance. It's because they saw a real, solid person who, just like them, can feel pain and fear. I used to think that vulnerability is something we should hide, something to fix alone and never show. But then he shattered that. It reminded me of something a director once said. The most important thing about being an artist is to allow us to be seen for who we are, not who we ought to be, and to give ourselves completely to the world, even the part that we're ashamed of, that we're afraid of, that are imperfect. When you stop performing who you should be and show who you truly are, you fully connect with people. The feelings you saw were yours alone, the fears you saw no one else would understand. They don't disappear, but you realize that you don't have to carry them all by yourself. Well, Dinga's story didn't end there. Because she learned to show her true self, the old rules no longer fit her. Then she created her own way. She took off her ballet shoes, put on a loose robe, and let herself move like wings and waves. People criticized her a lot. They said it wasn't art and told her to dance something normal. But she never gave up. She always chose to be herself. And because of this choice, her connection with people didn't end that night at St. Petersburg, but reached every one of us who read through her story. This is the highest level in any field. Not to repeat, but to redefine. Not to follow, but to find your own voice. She didn't create modern dance to make us out dancers. What she gave us is ability, is the courage to question the rules, to stand out when it no longer fits, and to find our own way to explore who we truly are. I still do ballet, still follow rules 100 years ago, but now dance become a conversation. I still build on foundation skills, but I learn to explore my feelings, my truths. And I'm no longer afraid of being imperfect, of having weaknesses. Instead, I've come to face them, accept them, and grow with them. Throughout the learning of dance, I've learned not to chase perfection, not success, not becoming someone else. Instead, I've come to aspire to be someone who dares to let my true self be seen, who dares to live life in my own way. Now, I know most of you might not dance, but every one of us have that one thing or more, things we do that make us feel most alive. Maybe it's the way you cook, teach, write, or sing. Whatever it is, find your dance. Because that thing can become a bridge connecting you to yourself and even the world beyond. Thank you.